Hello, this is Dr. Jason Munsell. Hopefully this will work out. Um, I was going to do this second recorded lecture for Chapter 2 in my office at school again, but I forgot my iPad. And then I thought maybe since my monitor at home is quite a bit bigger, that you could maybe see the PowerPoint that I created this morning a little bit better as I walk you through Chapter 2. Again, read Chapter 2. It's mainly sort of a lit review, but it's good stuff. And I found this cool template online with gun, blood, and then I just sort of noticed in the background here, I'm at home, my dog's right over there. He's got paw problems. He's got a cone on him. It's sad. Yeehaw! I have these right here. This was from a Halloween costume, but it's gonna be my prop. Sorry, Finn, but Finn didn't like that. Okay, so Chapter 2. So some of the stuff that the book covers that we're not going to cover per se, and the book says that it's not really going to cover, is basically this idea. And by the way, if you don't know what a literature review is, it is a review of the scholarly literature that is pertinent to whatever the subject might be. And so it's that's cool. But basically what they're trying to do is to showcase that a lot of folks in a lot of different disciplines or areas have studied crisis in some form or fashion. And so in the very beginning, they talk about how folks have studied this stuff in psychology. And the Table 2.1 actually is really good at sort of showing the general approaches that these different disciplines take to the study of crisis, risk and crisis communication. Psychology, obviously, tends to focus on mental modeling of the psyche and behavior and all that type of stuff. Sociology, disaster evacuation theories, and all these theories, social response to disasters, stuff from business, organizational sense making, organizational learning theory, blah blah blah, math and physics, chaos theory, complexity theory, sand pile, the political science, policy change theory, deep security theory, and I'll let you sort of read that. But here's the most important thing, because they don't dive into any of this stuff. They're just sort of showing that there's stuff out here. But this is the most important thing regarding that beginning part of Chapter 2. You will find, this is on the bottom of page 21, you will find, where am I? That many of the lessons described in the upcoming chapters are grounded in the interdisciplinary research described above. However, the communication discipline has produced considerable research on crisis communication. So, see? It's a crisis. The mail carrier might be here. Finn is going to save me from the crisis of mail. Finn, I'm lecturing. So basically they say, okay, there's lots of stuff out here, and we're going to, some of that stuff is going to show up in some of the theories that they talk about and all the stuff throughout the course of the entire book, but they're not focusing on it. So then they focus on basically two big areas before they get to their own stuff, media theories and crisis communication. By the way, the tables are awesome. I'll say something about that in a second. And then organizational theories of crisis communication, and then they finally get to their sort of their own stuff, discourse of renewal theory, which they really house within organizational theories of crisis communication. But here's the whole thing. Before we get to, love tables, it's a cool mid-century modern coffee table. Awesome. I do not have it. I just found it online. but I want that table. I have the thing for tables and chairs. I like chairs and I like tables. But here's the thing, and one of the things while I was going back over this chapter, I thought that they actually should have put some of the things they say on page 30 up through 31 at the beginning of the chapter, so you know what they're really trying to do in the first place, and that is talk about research and theories that have been done thus far in crisis communication. And so, so the stuff, basically they say, in general, theories, it's on the bottom of page 30, can describe communication, explain the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of communication, and prescribe how we should communicate. So you should know what a theory is in the first place before we get into it. So this chapter is all about what studies that folks have done and what they have found. And there is some implicit sort of lessons here, but mostly it's, again, just like the other stuff, a huge literature review of here's the research that has been done. And then for those of you who've taken my comm 499 or comm 200 know about gap statements, in the sense their discourse of renewal theory and all that type of stuff is their gap statement. So one of the things that I really like about their tables is that each of the, and these are the little bullet points here, tables are cool, each of the little areas in there, they take all the various theories that they're discussing in this particular chapter, and they say, okay, this is what this theory emphasizes. This is what the theory focuses on, and these are sort of the features of the theory. So just keep that in mind as we're sort of going through this, because again, these tables are really that right to the point. Okay, so theory stuff. I got an email. Awesome. Media and rhetorical theories, or framing. I'm adding rhetorical theories in here because they finally get to talking a little bit about rhetoric, but all of these things are sort of rhetorical theories, both in the media stuff and the organizational stuff. And if you don't know what rhetoric is, I teach rhetoric in lots of different classes, but basically, can you see me? Basically, from a traditional point of view, rhetoric is the art of finding in any given situation available means of persuasion, but in a more contemporary sense, it's really anything that invites us to see the world in a particular way, sort of. But I just like the word, and that's my background, so I'm adding that. So the second thing here is media and rhetorical theories of framing. And so the first thing that they talk about is news framing theory. Frame, I'm gonna live forever. I'm gonna learn how to fly high. This lecture is money. It's worth your penny. Penny for your thoughts. Okay. So basically, this whole notion of a frame is, generally speaking, a frame is just like anything else. It's a perspective. It's a certain way of looking at something. A metaphor is a frame. If I say love is a gun, isn't that a Beatles song? Something, right? Probably not. But the metaphor of gun offers a frame for love in a horrible, terrible sense. I don't know. But all the baggage associated with that then helps us give a certain frame to love. Love's a rose. It smells good. It's pretty, but thorny. But basically, frame is just sort of another term for perspective. It offers a certain slant, a certain way of looking at things. So basically, this particular theory, news framing theory, is all about how the news frames a particular crisis. Do they frame it in a positive way and in a negative way and all that type of stuff? Because if you're an organization, a lot of that stuff can really get out of your control. And so the second little bullet point says you do not have the right to be silent. One of the things that it says here is that you must be active. It talks about that example of the negative coverage of that hospital that laid off all those nurses. And it says, the financially struggling hospital remained silent throughout the crisis. The hospital never fully recovered from the crisis and was eventually sold to another health management company. Had the hospital offered a compelling explanation or frame for needing to lay off employees, the outcome might have been very different. So it's incumbent on the organization to try to offer the news a particular frame to help, when the news is covering the crisis. So basically, the whole thing is that news framing theory advocates that organizations take an active role in the framing process. If you are an organization and you're experiencing a crisis, you want to reach out to the media, you want to do everything that you can so you have a hand in how the media is framing the crisis, whether it's negative or positive, etc. And another aspect of this stuff about news framing theory, if you sort of get that, is exemplars. And exemplars are important because, if it, the whole news thing, if it bleeds, it leads, blood, they love horrible, horrible stuff. And so exemplars are elements of news stories that are made memorable by their visually vivid and emotionally strong content. Stories that are graphic in nature or that include a particularly disturbing visual element can capture audience attention and cause them to exaggerate the seriousness of the issue or event. And news, what are they really in the business for? To make money. So they want more viewers. And how they get more viewers? More dramatic stuff. They hyperbolize. You know what hyperbole is? It's exaggeration. Pretty much everything. Well, not maybe I'm cynical, but in any case, so it talks about lean, finely textured beef as pink slime. So you notice the whole Flint things that are going on right now. A lot of the images that you're seeing are of the water from Flint. I can't verify. This is the image right here from the New York Times this morning. I can't verify if that's actually from Flint, but And then the next slide here has another sort of cartoon that I found online, also about the Flint, Michigan crisis. And again, notice how Michigan 2016, this frames this not merely as the water is bad, but a racial situation. This is a crisis of civil rights. So it's really, really interesting, and again, all this is sort of framing. So the big point here is that, and the whole theory is that news is going to frame an event, a crisis, in a particular way. You as an organization need to be, or you're part of an organization, needs to be active in that process, and you need to understand the whole use of exemplars. And one of the thing is the power of exemplars to shift the media's attention, warrant caution to the part of reporters. Illman, Gibson, Sunder, and Perkins urge reporters to comprehend the influence of exemplars as well as the challenges for correcting or countering them once they are introduced to the public. But as an organization, if folks are using exemplars that might frame the crisis in a negative way for you, maybe you want to try to reframe it, because there's framing and reframing, blah, 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 blah. So in any case, that is the first big theory under media rhetorical theories, news framing theory. Theory 1. Theory 2 that they talk about under media and rhetorical theories is focusing events theory, if you want to call it a theory. And they do, focusing event theory. It grows from agenda setting. If you've ever taken one of my persuasion classes, or I've talked about agenda setting in lots of different classes. Basically, news sets the agenda of what is important. They decide what to cover, and pretty much everything is breaking. Breaking now, breaking now, breaking now, because we got this 24-hour news thing, and they got to make money. So, but they set, what's the first story? What's the top headline? What's the top story tonight? Top story, something about a celebrity getting naked or something like that. That's what they focus on.